Hi, everybody. Hey, this is the recorded version of the federal updates, i.e. the FAFSA stuff, that we put together for you. So this is the version that you can take a look at anytime. And we do want to thank everyone involved in putting together this presentation. It was a lot of work. So Dennis Schrader, especially David Levy, everyone from CASFA and or CISFA who had a hand in this, we appreciate it, as well as all the presenters who go out and present at our workshops. So enjoy, thanks a lot, and we will talk to you soon.
Welcome to the 2019 High School Counselors Workshop Series, sponsored by the California Community Colleges Student Financial Aid Administrators Association, the California Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, ECMC, and the California Student Aid Commission. Today we're going to go through a number of updates to the financial aid process, most of them from the federal government, the FAFSA process, and special situations you probably have all heard from your students. After this video, CSAC, or the California Student Aid Commission, will post the final version of this PowerPoint presentation, which includes all slides, notes, and updates. With the rebranding of the FAFSA.gov website, studentaid.gov website, and availability of the My Student Aid mobile app, students and parents will see a common look to the FAFSA regardless of how or where they connect. Although the presentation of questions may differ between the browser-based FAFSA and the mobile apps, My FAFSA, the wording of questions will remain the same. Users will be offered a customized experience based on their role, students, parents, or preparers. The My FAFSA app provides guidance on how to complete the FAFSA questions, making the overall process more engaging and user-friendly. With the passage of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, a number of changes were made to IRS tax return forms and filing requirements. In particular, there is now only one main tax return form for all filers, the 1040. The 1040A and the 1040EZ have been eliminated as of the 2018 tax year. Also, a number of new schedules have been introduced, including Schedule 1. If a parent or student filed a federal tax return, they will be asked on the FAFSA, did or will you file a Schedule 1 with your 2018 tax return? This question replaces the older FAFSA question regarding whether the student or parent could have filed a 1040A or 1040EZ. The response to this question helps to identify if students are eligible for the Simplified Needs Test or the Auto Zero EFC. The 2018 Federal Student Aid launched the My Student Aid app, available from both the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. The app allows students to manage their FSA IDs, complete their FAFSA through My FAFSA, track their borrowing information through My Federal Loans, use the My College Scorecard option to compare colleges and universities, find information for FSA contact centers. This year, the My FAFSA function now includes being able to complete a renewal FAFSA and use of the IRS data retrieval tool. Over 2 years ago, the federal government reconstituted year-round federal Pell Grant eligibility for students. This allows students to receive an additional Pell Grant within an academic year beyond the normal 2 full-time semester limit. For most students, this means they can receive Pell Grant in summer, thus accelerating their progress towards completion of their degree. Also, colleges can use either 2019-20 or the 2020-21 FAFSA results to make disbursements for the summer of 2020. Colleges will try to award federal Pell Grant from the FAFSA that provides the most benefit to the student. Because there are some additional rules that apply, it's best that students attending summer classes in summer 2020 should contact their college financial aid office for more guidance. Colleges want to maximize benefits for the student, which could be either an increased amount of Pell for summer based on EFC, or an increase in the number of semesters a student may receive Pell Grant. As these situations can be complicated, it's best for a student to consult with their college financial aid office. FSA ID users will be able to log in with a verified mobile phone number as an alternative to a username. A user must register his or her mobile phone number on the FSA ID website if he or she has not already done so. Users who enter an email address with a top-level domain type of edu, K-12, PVT, Tech, or CC will receive a warning that they should use an email address to which they will not lose access, as some of these domains may be associated with their high schools or community colleges and could be lost after graduation or transfer. Users can still opt to use an email address from these domains. Passwords will no longer require the use of special characters, like the pound sign, the dollar sign, the percentage sign, or the ampersand. However, users may continue to use these characters in their passwords. To help high school counselors and college financial aid staff, Federal Student Aid created the Financial Aid Toolkit available at financialaidtoolkit.ed.gov. The toolkit consolidates federal student aid resources into a searchable online database for those who interact with, support, or counsel students and families on making financial preparations for post-secondary education. You'll find general information about the FAFSA as well as tips and talking points for the outreach to students and their families. Items you can use in your outreach include fact sheets, videos, infographics, sample tweets, and more, and are available for download through the toolkit. And if you're looking for webinars to brush up on federal financial aid, including aid application procedures, the toolkit has the information you need. If you navigate to the resources section of the toolkit, you'll be presented with drop-down menus from which you can filter your choices for the types of resources you seek, the audience you are working with, and the specific topic you want to cover. Federal Student Aid is on Twitter and Facebook and encourages counselors and college access mentors to retweet or share posts. Federal Student Aid also has a YouTube channel with several playlists on college prep and financial aid topics, including the FAFSA. You are welcome to link to the videos or embed them in your own website. Federal Student Aid's content is in the public domain, so you may share it as long as you don't charge people for it. The FAFSA. Through the FAFSA.gov website, students can complete their initial 2020-21 FAFSA, continue to complete a saved FAFSA, make updates to their FAFSAs, update income and tax information, add or delete schools, update housing plans, and complete a renewal FAFSA. In subsequent years, students will be able to submit a renewal FAFSA, which will pre-populate demographic fields from a previous year's FAFSA. As mentioned earlier, Federal Student Aid launched the My Student Aid app, which includes the My FAFSA function for students and parents to complete the FAFSA. To use the My FAFSA function, the user, which could be a student, parent, or preparer, will need to log in with their FSA ID, as the screens presented will be tailored according to the role of the user. For 2020-21, the FAFSA still has 7 sections, although the names of some sections have changed a little. We won't cover all sections on this video, but instead focus on 3 sections that give our students and their families the most challenges. We will look at school selection, dependency status, and a portion of parents' information sections in the next few slides. The school selection section. There are a few tips to give students completing this section of the FAFSA. First, students can send their FAFSA results initially to up to 10 colleges. Students who are applying to a greater number of schools will have the opportunity to add additional colleges after the initial submission and processing of their FAFSA. Keep in mind that each Cal State and each UC are separate universities and must be listed separately. Second, colleges do not need to be listed in any particular order. Colleges see only themselves when the results are received. For Cal Grant awarding, CSAC requires students to select their California College of Attendance after the results of the student's FAFSA are processed and Cal Grant eligibility is determined. But the school listed first in California will be used initially by CSAC for determining Cal Grant eligibility. Third, for students who are certain they are leaving California to attend an institution outside the state, we highly recommend they include at least one school in California. Why? Although they could add a California school after March 2nd and still be given Cal Grant consideration, having at least one California college listed before March 2nd will allow the students to see if they have Cal Grant eligibility in the event they attend a California college or university. If a student does not list any California colleges on their initial FAFSA, they will be withdrawn from Cal Grant consideration. If they later decide to attend a school in California, they will need to add that school to their FAFSA and complete the Entitlement Cal Grant Application Correction Form. They can do this via their Web Grants for Students account or by contacting the California Student Aid Commission directly. This will then allow them to be reprocessed for Cal Grant consideration. Fourth, when schools have early admission deadlines or priority processing deadlines for financial aid, students should make sure they include these schools on their initial FAFSA submission. Students considering more than 10 colleges should follow the 4 rules above. Once their FAFSA is processed, indicated by the receipt of the student aid report, they can go back to their FAFSA, log in, go to the school selection section, remove schools, then add new schools. Students need their FSA IDs to submit changes, but all the new schools will receive their FAFSA information. Once a school receives it, even if a student takes the school off of their list, the school can process the student for financial aid. If the student uses the search function, they will receive a list of schools that met their search criteria. To select a school, the student simply marks the box next to the school. Students can continue to add up to a total of 10 schools to their FAFSA. The FAFSA uses this step to determine the dependency status of the student for federal and state financial aid purposes. Students may think they are independent, but the FAFSA questions in this section will determine whether the student is independent or dependent. Although the look of this section in the redesigned FAFSA differs from prior years, the questions generally remain the same. They are now presented in small groups with only 2 to 5 questions on screen at one time. The first few questions in this section will be pre-filled with answers the student provided in step 1 of the FAFSA. Children. Answering yes to this question means the student must currently be providing more than 50% of the child's financial support and will continue to do so throughout the upcoming school year, July 1st, 2020 to June 30, 2021. It is not only a matter of caring for the child. Additionally, child can include an expected birth, not yet born, during the school year. Providing more than 50% of support counts support received from sources other than the student's parents, such as CalWORKs or support from the student's boyfriend/girlfriend, as though it were provided by the student. There is a similar financial requirement for supporting other dependents living with the student. For most high school graduates, they will probably answer no to the question regarding other dependents. Note, a student who can answer yes to any question in this section will be considered an independent student for federal and state financial aid purposes. Now that we've touched on the first 5 questions, let's dive into some of the trickier questions in this section. Foster youth. Students should answer yes if at any time since they turned age 13 they were in foster care, even if they are no longer in foster care today. For federal student aid purposes, a ward of the court is not someone who is incarcerated. Also, the financial aid administrator at the college or university may require the student to provide documentation that he or she was in foster care or a ward of the court. Emancipated minors. Students answer yes if they can provide a copy of a court's decision that as of today, they are an emancipated minor. An emancipated minor is not the same as emancipation from child support. The former occurs prior to the child reaching the age of majority, while the latter occurs when the child reaches the age of majority. This is a common misunderstanding. They can also answer yes if they can provide a copy of a court's decision that they were an emancipated minor before they reached the age of being an adult in their state, which is 18 years in California. The court must be located in the student's state of legal residence at the time the court's decision was issued. Students should answer no if the student is still a minor and the court decision is no longer in effect or the court decision was not in effect at the time the student turned 18, became an adult in California. The financial aid administrator at the college may require the student to provide legal documentation that he or she was an emancipated minor. Legal guardianship. For this question, the definition of legal guardianship does not include the student's parents, even if they were appointed by a court to be the student's legal guardians. Students cannot be considered a legal guardian of themselves. A legal guardianship established by an attorney is not sufficient. The legal guardianship must have been ordered by a court of competent jurisdiction in the student's state of legal residence. Legal guardianship is different from custody in some ways. A legal guardianship does not terminate the rights of a parent, including custody. Instead, it suspends the rights, allowing the legal guardian the right to act on behalf of the child under the guardianship. Dependency determination. What was once a group of 3 questions on the FAFSA regarding homelessness has been changed to an initial question asking if a student was homeless or self-supporting and at risk of being homeless. Students who answer yes to this question, as shown in the upper left screenshot, will see a second screen shown in the bottom right of the slide to help them determine who or what agency would be able to confirm their status. This setup is part of the skip logic employed by the FAFSA to tailor questions to students based on answers they provided earlier in the FAFSA process. Homeless unaccompanied youth. Students can be considered homeless unaccompanied youth if at any time on or after July 1st, 2019, they meet all three criteria listed on screen. Homeless means lacking fixed, regular, and adequate housing, which includes in shelters, parks, motels, hotels, public spaces, camping grounds, cars, abandoned buildings, or temporarily living with other people because the student had nowhere else to go. This may include students who are couch surfing. Unaccompanied means the student is not living in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. Youth means the student is under 24 years of age. Resources available at naehcy.org from the National Association for the Education of Homeless Children and Youth. Students are considered to be independent if they are determined to be homeless unaccompanied youth by high school or school district homeless liaisons, U.S. Department of Health or Urban Development HUD Homeless Assistance Program Director or Designee, the director of a runaway or homeless youth basic center or transitional living program, which includes a Runaway and Homeless Youth Act program director or their designee. Also, the college's financial aid administrator can certify the students meeting the homeless unaccompanied youth status based on the preponderance of available information presented by the student. Here is a what-if scenario. If a student has answered no to all of the questions in this step, he or she will be considered a dependent student for financial aid purposes. As such, he or she will be required to provide parental information in the next step we'll cover. In those rare instances where a student cannot provide parental information but has answered no to all of the questions, they have an option to continue completing and submitting their FAFSA, or, as noted on the screen, they can mark the "I am unable to provide information about my parents" button, and they will see this screen. The student can continue to complete their FAFSA, skip the parent section, submit their FAFSA, and it will be processed, but only for direct unsubsidized Stafford loans initially. No EFC, expected family contribution, will be calculated, but all of the listed colleges will receive the FAFSA information. The student will need to follow up with the college or colleges for each college's process for determining if they can be considered independent due to special or unusual circumstances. We'll have an example of two in the last part of the presentation regarding situations where a student might be considered independent due to special or unusual circumstances. Otherwise, for a large majority of students coming out of high school, we can assume they are considered dependent for federal and state financial aid purposes. Oftentimes, there are questions regarding which parent or parents the student should use for supplying financial aid and household information on the FAFSA. For a quick reference, here's a breakdown that should cover 99% of all possible combinations of parents. Who's my parent when I fill out my FAFSA? The first question that's asked to the student is, are your parents married to each other? If the student answers yes, then the student should report information for both parents on the FAFSA. If the student answers no, the next question they need to answer is, do your parents live together? If the student answers yes, then the student needs to report information for both parents on the FAFSA, even if they were never married, are divorced, or are separated. If they answer no, the student needs to ask themselves, did you live with one parent more than the other over the past 12 months? If the student answers yes, the student needs to report information on the FAFSA for the parent they lived with the most. If they answer no, the student needs to report information on the FAFSA for the parent who provided more financial support over the past 12 months or in the last year they received support. The next question is, has the parent remarried? If the parent has not remarried, the student does not need to report additional parental information. However, if the parent has remarried, the student also needs to report information for their step-parent on the FAFSA as well. The following people are not your parents unless they have legally adopted you: a widowed step-parent, grandparents, foster parents, legal guardians, older brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles. There are always parts of the FAFSA that seem prone to misunderstanding or omission, or are often corrected after initial FAFSA submission. Students and parents should be sure to read and understand the definition of key terms used on the FAFSA, including legal guardianship, parent, the number of people in the family household, and in college. Also, parents should be careful when they are completing the FAFSA on behalf of their student, as there's always confusion as to who you or your refer to in questions on the form. The words you or your always refer to the student, and both student and parent should be very careful when entering names, date of birth, and social security numbers on the form. Transposition of numbers or letters can cause delays in processing. So next we're going to be going over some common FAFSA mistakes. First, students should be encouraged to list all possible colleges and universities on the FAFSA that they are considering, even if they are only backup schools or backup schools. Students and parents should be encouraged to use the IRS data retrieval tool if allowable. This can oftentimes save time and hopefully avoid verifying this information later with the financial aid office at their college. It also helps in reporting correct information for income, taxes paid, exemptions, and filing status. Reporting of assets can be an area where we find mistakes. First, the net worth of assets are to be reported as of the date the FAFSA is completed. For example, the net worth of property would be the difference between the current market value less any outstanding mortgage on the property. Families should also make sure they are not including the values of assets which are exempt for inclusion on the FAFSA. The most common asset they should not include are the value of their primary residence and the value of retirement accounts. Both of these assets are excluded from the FAFSA. 529 plans tend to cause some problems too. In short, if the student submitting the FAFSA has a 529 plan through their parents, then the value of the plan is reported under the parents' assets section of the FAFSA. All other 529 plans owned by the parents for other family members are also reported in the parents section of the FAFSA. 529 plans owned by grandparents or other relatives are not reported on the FAFSA, but distributions from these non-parental 529 plans will be reported on the FAFSA in future years as untaxed income under money received or paid on your behalf, but not reported elsewhere on the FAFSA. These are some of the common FAFSA concerns. Related to some of the mistakes often made by students and parents completing the FAFSA, there are some areas of concern that pop up that we need to address. If a student determines they've misreported their name on a FAFSA, this can be easily fixed by the student through the FAFSA. Students can go into their FAFSA, make a correction, then sign and submit their application for reprocessing. This should be less and less an issue, as students should be using their FSA ID to start their FAFSA, so their name has already been confirmed as accurate during the FSA ID creation process. If the student has misreported their social security number, it is highly recommended that the student complete a new FAFSA, as otherwise their record will be associated with the wrong number for that academic year, which could complicate matters at their college financial aid office. This, just like misreported names, should be less and less an issue, as students should be using their FSA ID to start their FAFSA. You may get or receive questions from students regarding selective service requirements. How this affects transgender or transitioning students is as follows. The selective service registration requirement applies to any person assigned the sex of male at birth. Students can obtain a status information letter from selective service if they need to clarify their exemption to registration. Lastly, although the FAFSA is available after March 2nd, Students should complete the form as soon as possible on or after October 1st, but before March 2nd for maximum aid consideration. Students who apply for need-based aid during the first 3 months of the FAFSA application cycle tend to receive, on average, twice as much grant aid. Some words of encouragement to our students and parents. If they are attending a FAFSA workshop, please come together. It can be difficult to have just a parent or student trying to complete a FAFSA, and it is highly recommended that students and parents each create their FSA IDs before attending a workshop. Too many times we see students and their custodial parents getting bogged down in the FSA ID process, leaving little or no time to work on the FAFSA. On a related note, we may have issues in future years when a parent was the creator of the student's FSA ID and fails to share this information with the student. Thus, when the student tries to complete the FAFSA for their second year at college, they either don't have their FSA ID information or they try to create a new FSA ID. The FAFSA demonstration website. The U.S. Department of Education has a test system for financial aid administrators and high school counselors. If you'd like to create a dummy FAFSA, check out the questions, see how the skip logic reacts to answers you input, or just look at the FAFSA on the web pages. Check out the test site at fafsademo.test.ed.gov. The username to use is eddemo, and the password is FAFSA test. The 2020-21 test system is expected to be available in mid to late September. If you go into the system too early, you will find data relating to the 2019-20 FAFSA, not the 2020-21 FAFSA.